What if you could plant a garden this June and never have to replant most of it again? Not because you are buying new plants every spring or doing anything special, but because the plants themselves are handling the job. They drop seeds. Those seeds find the soil, and year after year, your garden keeps filling in and expanding on its own. That is the promise of self-seeding plants. And it is a promise these 13 have been keeping in American gardens for centuries. Subscribe to Evergreen Garden so you never miss a video like this one. Number 1 is Black-Eyed Susan. And if there is one plant that earns its place in a low-maintenance garden without argument, this is it. The golden yellow daisy with the dark center has been growing wild across American meadows and roadsides for so long that most people assume it was always here, everywhere it grows. It was not always this widespread. Black-Eyed Susan originally grew from the Central Plains east to the Atlantic coast, and when European settlers began clearing forests and turning soil through the 1700s and 1800s, it moved right in and made itself at home wherever bare ground appeared. That opportunistic spirit is exactly what makes it such a reliable self-seeder generation after generation. Each plant produces hundreds of seeds packed into those cone-shaped seed heads you see standing through the winter months. When you leave the stems up in fall instead of cutting them back, the seeds dry right there on the plant. Birds pick some of them. Wind knocks others loose. By spring, you find new seedlings scattered through your beds without any work from you. Research at Midwest universities confirmed that Rudbeckia hirta seeds have a natural dormancy mechanism that delays germination until soil temperature is right. They wait for ideal conditions before sprouting, which means they almost always come up exactly when they should. To plant in June, direct sow seeds on the surface of bare soil and water gently. They need light to germinate, so do not bury them. Plants grow quickly in their first season, bloom in late summer and fall, and then begin seeding themselves starting the following year. Once established, you will have Black-Eyed Susans returning indefinitely with no replanting. USDA zones 3 through 9. They tolerate drought, poor soil, and full sun, and ask almost nothing in return for decades of color. Number 2 is purple coneflower. And if you are not already growing it, June is the right time to change that. Echinacea purpurea is one of the most recognized wildflowers in the country, not just because it is beautiful, but because Native Americans were using it medicinally for centuries before European contact. The Lakota, the Cheyenne, and dozens of other Plains nations used the root to treat infections, toothaches, and snake bites. When German herbalists got hold of it in the 1880s, they turned it into one of the most researched medicinal plants in history, and today there are more than 300 published clinical studies examining its effects on immune function. The self-seeding behavior of purple coneflower is one of its best traits. The seed heads look like spiky brown globes when they dry in fall, and goldfinches will cling to them all winter eating seeds. The ones birds drop or miss will sprout in spring. Even without birds, the seeds fall naturally and germinate readily if you leave the stems undisturbed through winter. Researchers have confirmed that echinacea seeds benefit from cold stratification, meaning a winter spent in frozen ground actually improves their germination rate the following spring. Plants that start from naturally cold stratified seeds are consistently more vigorous than greenhouse starts. June planting gives plants a full growing season to put down strong roots before their first winter. They bloom in their second year from seed. USDA zones 3 through 9. Full sun, well-drained soil, and a little patience in year 1 gives you a self-sustaining colony that expands steadily from that point forward. And speaking of plants with centuries of medicinal history, number 11 coming up has been used as a headache remedy on every continent where it grows. Number 3 is columbine, one of the most graceful self-seeders you will ever grow in a garden setting. Those nodding, spurred flowers in shades of red, yellow, purple, and white have been cultivated in American gardens since colonial times. But the native species, Aquilegia canadensis, has been growing wild in woodlands and rocky meadows from Nova Scotia all the way to Florida for thousands of years. Early European settlers were so taken with it that seeds were being sent back to England by the 1600s, where it became a permanent fixture in cottage gardens that still grow it today. What makes columbine such a reliable self-seeder is the way the seed pods behave after flowering. When the blooms finish, upright pods form and dry in place. As they dry, the pods split open and seeds are catapulted outward with a surprising amount of force. In a single season, one plant can scatter dozens of seeds across a radius of several feet, and those seeds sit through a full winter and germinate the following spring without any attention from you. Over a few years, columbine drifts naturally across shaded corners, woodland edges, and rock gardens in a way that looks completely unplanned and entirely natural. June is a good time to direct sow seeds on the surface of prepared soil. Press them down lightly, but do not cover them deeply since they need light to germinate well. USDA zones 3 through 9. One thing worth knowing before you plant: the seeds and roots of columbine contain toxic alkaloids, and while accidental poisoning from casual garden handling is unlikely, it is worth keeping young children and pets from chewing on the leaves or seeds. The flowers are safe, and the plants are fine to grow and handle in normal gardening, but that awareness is worth having from the start. Number 4 is foxglove, and this one changes the way you think about biennials entirely. Most gardeners avoid biennials because they do not bloom until their second year, which feels like too long to wait. Foxglove solves this problem by seeding itself so prolifically that once it is established, you always have first-year rosettes and second-year blooming plants in the ground at the same time. That means those dramatic, tall flower spikes show up every summer without you ever replanting. English cottage gardens figured this out hundreds of years ago and have relied on it ever since. Foxglove has been growing in European meadows and woodland edges for thousands of years, but its relationship with medicine is one of the most important chapters in botanical history. In 1785, a British physician named William Withering published a landmark study of foxglove's effects on the heart after learning about it from a folk herbalist in Shropshire, England. His work led directly to the development of digitalis medications that are still prescribed for heart conditions today. The same chemistry that makes it medicinally significant also makes it one of the most potent plants in any garden. Every part of the foxglove plant is highly toxic to humans, pets, and livestock. The leaves, flowers, and seeds contain cardiac glycosides that can cause serious and potentially fatal heart rhythm problems if ingested. Millions of American gardens grow foxglove safely, but it calls for clear awareness from the start. Keep children and pets away from the plants at all stages. Wash your hands after working with seedlings or leaves, and never bring any part of it indoors where it could be mistaken for something edible. Scatter seeds on the surface of moist soil in a spot with afternoon shade. USDA zones 4 through 9. Number 5 is larkspur, one of the oldest cottage garden flowers in American history. Those tall spikes of delicate blue, purple, pink, and white blooms have been growing in American gardens since the 1600s, when seeds arrived with the earliest European settlers as one of the first ornamental plants brought across the Atlantic. Larkspur was grown at Monticello under Thomas Jefferson's supervision, which tells you exactly how deep its roots go in the American gardening tradition. It produces its blooms in late spring and early summer, in a palette that is genuinely hard to match with any other plant at that time of year. Larkspur is a cool season annual that self-seeds so reliably it behaves almost exactly like a perennial. It completes its life cycle in spring and early summer, sets seed as temperatures climb, and those seeds sit dormant through summer heat before germinating in fall or early spring when soil cools back down. Botanists studying seed dormancy have found that larkspur seeds have a built-in thermal inhibition mechanism that prevents germination when soil temperature is too high. They simply wait for the right conditions, which is why they return with such predictable dependability every single year. Here is what every gardener needs to know before planting larkspur. All parts are toxic. The alkaloids are harmful to humans, and the young plants and seeds are especially dangerous to cattle and livestock. Keep children and pets away from the seedlings. Take care handling seeds with bare hands, and if you have grazing animals near your garden, think carefully about placement. In a normal residential garden, the risk is minimal with basic awareness. Direct sow in June in USDA zones 2 through 11. Seeds rest through summer and germinate in fall or the following early spring. Number 6 is borage. And once you plant it, you will be finding it in your garden for many years to come. Those startling blue, star-shaped flowers have been grown in herb gardens across Europe and the Middle East for at least 2,000 years. Roman soldiers were said to drink borage-infused wine before battle because of a belief it provided courage, and that association was widely enough held that Gerard's 1597 herbal described it as a plant that drives away sorrow and increases the joy and comfort of the heart. The common name traces back through the Latin borage to an Arabic phrase meaning father of sweat, a reference to its long use as a traditional cold remedy. What makes borage extraordinary as a self-seeder is sheer volume. One established plant scatters hundreds of seeds across the surrounding soil without any encouragement. Pull a spent plant and you will find seeds already scattered at the base before you have finished pulling. Leave it standing and seeds find bare soil several feet away. The hairy stems and leaves are rough to handle, but the flowers are entirely edible, commonly used to garnish salads and cold drinks, and they are exactly the color that bees find irresistible all summer long. In June, direct sow borage seeds in full sun in average to poor soil. Dry, lean conditions often produce better plants than rich amended beds because it keeps the stems upright rather than flopping. Rich soil makes them go soft and sprawling. USDA zones 3 through 10, grown as an annual, reseeding to behave like a perennial across most of that range. Once you have borage, you always have borage. Number 7 is nasturtium, and it is the friendliest self-seeder on this entire list. Those round, lily-pad leaves and bright flowers in shades of orange, red, and deep yellow have been grown in American gardens since the 1700s. Nasturtiums originated in the Andes Mountains of Peru and Bolivia, where the Incas cultivated them as a food crop for generations. Spanish explorers brought them to Europe in the 16th century, and within 100 years, they were established in every apothecary garden in England and France. By the time they arrived in colonial North America, they were already carrying centuries of culinary and medicinal tradition. Every part of the nasturtium is edible. The flowers are peppery and sweet. The leaves carry a mild watercress flavor, and the seeds can be pickled as a close substitute for capers. The plant contains glucotropiolin, a compound that breaks down into mustard oil and gives it both its flavor and genuine antimicrobial properties. Herbalists in Europe used it for respiratory infections for centuries, and modern research has confirmed its antibacterial and antifungal activity. As a self-seeder, nasturtium works because the seeds are large, visible, and fall directly below the parent plant where they sprout the following spring. In June, press seeds an inch deep directly in the ground where you want them to grow, since they resent being transplanted. Full sun and lean, well-drained soil produces the most flowers. Rich soil makes lush leaves at the expense of blooms. They grow as annuals throughout most of the country, and as perennials in USDA zones 9 through 11, self-seeding reliably in warmer parts of the country from zone 4 upward. Number 8 is California poppy, and nothing on this list matches its ability to find bare ground and claim it. Those papery orange cups that close every evening and reopen each morning have been growing wild on California hillsides and grasslands for so long they became the state flower in 1903. But California poppy is not limited to California. It grows as a wildflower throughout the American West and has naturalized in disturbed ground from the Atlantic coast to the Gulf of Mexico. Wherever there is bare soil and full sun, it will eventually find its way there on its own. California poppy is a cool season annual that self-seeds with almost no assistance required from the gardener. When the seed pods are ripe, they split open along their length. The curved pod snaps inward, and seeds are launched up to a foot from the parent plant. Each plant produces a dozen or more pods carrying 10 to 15 seeds each, which means a single plant this June can become a colony by the following spring. The seeds are extremely cold hardy and survive through a full winter buried in soil without any loss of germination capacity the following season. In June, scatter seeds over bare, well-tilled soil in full sun. Press them in lightly, but do not bury them deeply, since they need some light to germinate. They establish best when direct sown rather than transplanted, since the taproot resents disturbance. USDA zones 6 through 10 as a perennial, grown as a reliable self-seeding annual throughout most of the country where winters are colder. Sandy, gravelly, or lean soil gets the best results. This is a plant that genuinely thrives on neglect, and the more you leave it alone, the better it performs. Number 9 is sweet alyssum, and it is the quiet one that keeps showing up year after year without drawing attention to itself. Those tiny white or lavender flowers clustered in dense, fragrant mounds have been a fixture in cottage gardens and border edges since the Victorian era, when English gardeners discovered that something low enough to trace a stone path or spill over a garden wall could carry enough fragrance to scent an entire yard on a warm summer afternoon. The honey-like fragrance is not accidental. It evolved specifically to attract parasitic wasps and hoverflies, the most effective natural predators of garden pests like aphids and caterpillars. Sweet alyssum originated around the Mediterranean basin and has been in cultivation for at least 400 years. What most gardeners do not realize is that it serves a practical purpose well beyond looking pretty at the edge of a border. Research from agricultural universities has confirmed that planting alyssum near vegetable crops significantly increases the populations of beneficial predatory insects in those beds, which reduces pest pressure without any spraying or chemical treatment. Some commercial vegetable growers now plant it in deliberate rows between crops, specifically for this purpose, a practice called banker plant gardening. As a self-seeder, sweet alyssum sets thousands of tiny seeds that drop directly onto the soil below the parent plant and germinate wherever they find bare, moist ground nearby. In June, press seeds gently into the surface of prepared soil in full sun or light shade. They need light to germinate, so do not cover them deeply. Water gently until established. USDA zones 5 through 9 as a perennial, treated as an annual in colder climates where it still reseeds itself the following spring with no help from you whatsoever. Number 10 is love in a mist, and it is one of the most historically layered self-seeders in any garden. The blue, white, or lavender flowers, surrounded by a delicate haze of thread-like bract, have been grown in European gardens since medieval times, when the plant was valued as much for its seeds as for the flowers themselves. The seeds of Nigella damascena are closely related to the culinary spice known as nigella, or kalonji, used in Middle Eastern, Indian, and North African cooking for thousands of years. Egyptian archaeologists found nigella seeds sealed inside the tomb of Tutankhamun, placed there more than 3,000 years ago. The botanical name, damascena, tells you it traveled through Damascus, the Great Silk Road trading hub, on its way from its wild origins in southern Europe and Western Asia into the herb gardens of medieval Europe. By the 1500s, it was growing in virtually every English cottage garden, and seeds were among the first ornamental flowers brought to the American colonies. The inflated, ornately striped seed pods that form after the flowers fade are beautiful enough that dried flower arrangers prize them almost as highly as the blooms themselves. When the pods dry, they split and scatter seeds in a wide radius around the parent plant. June sowing works well in USDA zones 2 through 11. Direct sow on the surface of well-prepared soil in full sun or partial shade. Seeds prefer cool temperatures for germination, so June-sown seeds often wait until fall to sprout, overwinter as small rosettes, and bloom the following spring in a wave of color that feels like it appeared from nowhere. Once established, love in a mist maintains itself season after season without any replanting, drifting gradually across the garden in ways that always look natural. Number 11 is feverfew, and it is the plant on this list with the longest continuous documented history as a medicinal herb across European and Mediterranean cultures. Those small daisy-like flowers with white petals and bright yellow centers look modest, but feverfew has been growing in herb gardens and on hillsides around the Mediterranean for at least 2,000 years. Ancient Greek physicians used it to reduce fever, and the name itself comes from the Latin febrifugia, meaning fever reducer. By the Middle Ages, it was among the most widely planted herbs in monastic medicine gardens throughout Britain and continental Europe. Modern pharmacological research has confirmed that feverfew contains a compound called parthenolide that inhibits platelet aggregation and the release of certain inflammatory chemicals in the body. Clinical trials published in peer-reviewed medical journals have found evidence that regular consumption of feverfew leaves reduces both the frequency and severity of migraines in some patients. These findings explain why the plant remained in continuous medical use for more than 2,000 years without interruption. The ancient healers were not guessing. Modern, controlled trials have confirmed their observations in careful, repeatable studies. As a self-seeder, feverfew is almost too prolific. One established plant produces thousands of seeds, and those seeds find bare soil with genuine determination. The seedlings are small and easy to thin if you get more than you want, but the ones you leave grow quickly and bloom in their first season from a late spring planting. June is an excellent time to direct sow or transplant nursery starts. Full sun to light shade with well-drained soil. USDA zones 5 through 9 as a short-lived perennial, self-seeding so reliably that it functions as a permanent annual even in colder zones. Once established, it does not leave. Number 12 is wild bergamot, and it is the native plant on this list that American pollinators depend on more than almost any other. Those lavender pink flower heads that look like ragged, spiky pom-poms have been growing in dry prairies, open woodland edges, and sunny meadows from the Atlantic coast to the Rocky Mountains for thousands of years. Native Americans throughout the eastern half of the continent used it medicinally, as a food flavoring, and as a tea plant long before European settlement. The Ojibwe used it for respiratory ailments. The Teton Dakota seasoned game meat with it. Wild bergamot gets its common name from the resemblance of its scent to the bergamot orange used to flavor Earl Grey tea, though the two plants are entirely unrelated to one another. The fragrance comes from thymol and carvacrol, the same aromatic compounds found in thyme and oregano, which are now recognized to have genuine antimicrobial activity. Researchers have found that these volatile compounds actively deter certain leaf-chewing insects while simultaneously attracting the native bee species that are most effective at cross-pollination, a chemical strategy refined over millions of years of coevolution between this plant and the pollinators that depend on it. Wild bergamot self-seeds moderately well, and also spreads by underground rhizomes, forming slowly expanding colonies that return year after year without any replanting. In June, plant nursery starts or direct sow seeds in full sun to light shade. USDA zones 3 through 9 tolerates drought once established and grows well in lean soil where many ornamental plants fail. Planted alongside black-eyed Susan from number 1, and you have a late summer pollinator combination that manages itself completely. Number 13 is perennial salvia, and it closes this list because it demonstrates that the most reliable performers in a self-sustaining garden are often the ones that gardeners walk past looking for something more dramatic. The upright blue-purple flower spikes that bloom in late spring and rebloom when cut back are among the most dependable plants in any low-maintenance garden. And the fact that they quietly produce self-sown seedlings around them each year is something even experienced gardeners are often surprised to discover. Salvia nemorosa has been growing in dry meadows and rocky hillsides across Central and Eastern Europe for thousands of years. The salvia family includes more than 900 species found on every continent except Antarctica, used medicinally in virtually every culture that encountered it. The name comes from the Latin salvare, meaning to save or to heal, a direct reflection of its role in traditional European medicine. Medieval herbalists consistently listed it as a treatment for memory loss, fever, and digestive ailments for centuries. Modern research on Salvia nemorosa specifically has found that leaf extracts contain significant antioxidant compounds, including rosmarinic acid and luteolin, both currently being studied for potential neuroprotective effects in the brain. The species is also proving exceptionally resilient in university horticultural trials under warming climate conditions, maintaining strong bloom performance at temperatures higher than most comparable ornamental perennials currently in common garden use. In the garden, perennial salvia self-seeds modestly but consistently, producing seedlings around the parent plant each season that can be left in place to fill gaps or moved to new areas. Deadhead the main spikes after the first flush to encourage rebloom through summer, but leave 1 or 2 spikes to set seed in late summer for the following year. Full sun, excellent drainage, and lean soil. USDA zones 4 through 9, one of the most underrated permanently returning plants in the American garden, and a reliable final piece for a garden that largely runs itself. Those are 13 self-seeders that fill your garden year after year without asking for much in return. The system works best if you leave the seed heads standing through fall and winter instead of cutting everything back clean. Let the seeds fall where they may. Pull the ones that come up in the wrong spot and leave the rest where they landed. Within 2 or 3 seasons, you will have a garden that looks like it has been there for decades, because in a way, it has. One thing worth repeating before you get started: Foxglove, number 4, and larkspur, number 5, are both genuinely toxic plants. Keep children and pets well clear of them and wash your hands after working with the seedlings or seeds. That one simple habit keeps everything safe and lets you grow both of those beautiful plants without any concern. Subscribe to Evergreen Garden if you have not already, and drop a comment below telling us which of these 13 you are starting this June. We read every single one.